Was another year and another trip to India. There's my PowerPoint. First of all, I appreciate the elders allowing me this opportunity to give an update on the work that's going on at Jack Now. I appreciate Rodney allowing me this night to do this. I'd usually do it on the youth night, but the countywide youth training service is next Sunday, and I just ask that they let me do it sooner rather than later, so it's more fresh on my mind. Parents, you're welcome for the whistles I gave to each of you. I think that was still on. Yeah. I got a couple of Christian psalms and hymn books that's in the Telugu language laying up. Marie's already read through it, so if anybody wants one, please come have one. But so Jesse goes to India again. I traveled January 12th through the 20th. And so why India? Well, as you know, the Great Commission, Matthew 28:19, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Mark 16:15, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel. Luke 24:47, repentance for the forgiveness of sins should be proclaimed in his name to all nations. So we got all nations and all the world. So in the United States, anywhere from 70 to 83%, the numbers I saw, of the people in the U.S. proclaim to be Christian. Now that's everything. That takes everything into consideration. Whereas India, it's only 2.3%. So I get to thinking about this. We all kind of live in our own worlds, so to speak. Usually my world consists of Muscle Shoals to Lawrenceburg, usually. We all have our own. I've been blessed with this opportunity to go to India and for that to be included in my world. But within our own worlds, are we proclaiming the gospel? In the U.S., we should have that covered. Everybody in the U.S., it's like Wayne Barrier said, should have the opportunity to hear the gospel. But with only 2.3% in India being Christian, that opportunity is not fair. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to go to India and else, in those places, but we should support those that can. But 1 Peter 2, verse 9 says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light. We're all called to proclaim the excellencies of him who called us. So we are all to proclaim his gospel and to proclaim God. So I'll get on into my trip now. Everybody was asking me about Elijah, so I'm going to start just with Elijah and what's going on with him. Going over was to see Elijah wasn't the main purpose of this trip, but I did take a day out. Actually, he picked me up at the airport in Hyderabad. Hyderabad's approximately 5 hours away from the Jack Now Institute in Vijayawada, which is another 3 hours away from where Elijah lives in Palakkad. Linwood, Cockerham, and Zonell Rainboat traveled but we all traveled together over there. Although they left on Thursday, where I left on Saturday. Just my family commitments. I tried to keep my trip a little bit shorter. So there I'm with Elijah, and that's his two brothers and his sister there. Met me at the airport, and also he had a cousin there with him. So just a brief update. He's got the water plant up and going. You can see it there on the left, and then that hose there, that's where people come. They take the hose off the wall, and they fill up those containers there. I think they pay about a person pays 10 rupees for that. So there's 67 rupees equals $1. So as you can see, 10 rupees isn't much. There's some more pictures of it. That picture on the bottom there, that's the water that's coming in, and then it's filtered through that system there on the right. He still tried to get me to drink some, and Arliss warned me before I got there, don't drink the water. So I won't get on chance. This is the first time in 3 times I didn't get sick, so we're all thankful for that as well. So there's a bus that they're using that they can take the seats off to haul the water, but they're also using that at their church as well. Then that little the three-wheeler there, they haul around town and can take the water about. And then there's Elijah and his dad and his brother trying to figure out how to crank it one day. All the engines there are diesel, so I just thought that was a humorous picture there, them three trying to figure it out. We left for the day, and they didn't get cranked until we came back. One of the most interesting things while I was with Elijah was this New Horizons. This was Brother Johnson and his wife Esther. You see them in the bottom left there. I'm in the picture with them. He went to college at Abilene in Texas. He lives there fairly close to where Elijah is. But this is a home for sex trafficking victims, girls. There you can see the girls there that they have. This is a work that they have going on. These girls range in age from like 10 to 18. A 10-year-old, it hurt my heart for all of them. But just seeing the small girls there, I couldn't understand. But they do crafts and things there. They all came and gave me they all came up to me and told me their favorite Bible verse, which I wasn't sure what they were saying as they was all speaking in Telugu. But so it was a good thing. But I put the picture there on the bottom right, just to show the stairways have to be gated up because there's a high suicide rate among sex trafficking victims. So that was just a work that really touched my heart while I was there. Just keep Brother Johnson, Sister Esther in your prayers. Now this is Brother Ravi. Elijah took me to meet him, and I think it was a Wednesday night when Elijah picked me up, and so we traveled from Vijayawada to Palakal that night, and Brother Ravi was wanting to meet me, and so we stopped at his place, which was on the way to drop him back off, and he took me up to show me their church building, and I see this timeline on the wall, which it's all in Telugu. But as I'm talking to Elijah, he said this was translated from Brother Charles Leonard's timeline. So a guy from right here in Lawrence County, his timeline is on the wall in India. I just thought that was amazing. I know I've told Jeff and Carolyn about that as well. All right. Now we get to Jack Nell Institute. We had a hearty welcome to our beloved brothers, which included sister too, though. So it's always fun to see those signs, and I know they try their best with their English there, but like I say, Zonell, Linwood, and I all made the trip over. He said in the bulletin this morning, this was a hard trip for many reasons. There's, as we'll get into it, there's many things that went on there the past year. And then for me personally, just, everything my family has going on, it was tough. And I know a lot of folks here question how I could go or why I could go. And I hope as I go through this, you can see why it was necessary that I needed to go as well. First, I just want to do a little history of Jack Nell. In '82, Jack Cox made his first trip to India and met Chandrapal. I suppose his wife Nell was with him on this trip. '84, the print operation began in North India, moved to Vijayawada in '87. The print operation that's still ongoing. It's a very important part of the work. I suppose that book there was probably done out of that print operation. They do newsletters and such as well. So 1990 is Jack kept making trips over there, and Chandrapal was his translator. So as they went around teaching and preaching, the decision was made to build the Northside Sayre Training Institute. The Northside Church of Christ and the Sayre Church of Christ were the two churches that were the overseeing churches of the institute. And I've been told, like, as Jack would go over there and preach, hundreds would be baptized at a time, which is great, right? But the only reason that many of them were being baptized is when they say an American, they want to do with that American saying because they think that maybe they can get something from that American. It wasn't necessarily the gospel that was touching them. It was just, if I do what this American says, what will they give me? You know, even today as we go over there, they don't see many white people over there. And especially as we go out in the villages, that's even more clearer. You know, in Hyderabad and Vijayawada, the bigger cities, they don't know this as much. But even as far out as where Elijah lives, and then we went to one congregation that was on the edge of the forest. It was about a 2.5-hour car ride, and you can tell they've never seen many white men there before. 91, the 6-week and the 3-month preacher training courses began. Here you can see, I showed these pictures last year, I just wanted to put them back in there. This was the construction of the Jack Nell Institute. So in 92, they began the orphanage and widows home. As Nell would travel over there, she would see the orphans there at the bus stations, train stations, and it broke her heart to see them there. And so her and Kamari, I think, worked together to get the orphanage up and going. And then the widows, tradition was a widow didn't have much use to them in India. They were basically expected to throw themselves on the casket of their husband as they was being lowered into the ground. That has changed, but anyway, so there was a need for folks to take care of the widows, and so that's how the widows also came about, because they could come and take care of the orphans. So with the orphanage came the English medium or speaking school, and that began in 92. Since we had the orphans, we needed to train the orphans as well and give them an education. Christian Marriage Bureau started in 95. This was just to help the folks have Christian marriages. 2000, that's when Leoma comes into play, and the church here, the elders began the oversight of the work. Arliss Gray and Robert Morris were the two deacons that were working with it. And also that year is when the 2-year preacher training class began. There you can see after the buildings were completed, and there's Jack and Nell there in the middle. 2002's Jack Cox passed away. That's when the name was changed to the Jack Nell Institute. 1 Timothy 5:17, those that rule well, actually speaking of elders that rule well, will be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. They just want to do something to honor Jack. 2003, that the institute was recognized by the Indian government. I know that was a very important thing. Even today, sometimes when I wire money, the bank calls me back and says that didn't go through. It makes me nervous. Luckily, every time we've rewired it again, it's went through. Like I say, Christians just 2.3% of the population over there, and the government is not very friendly to Christians. And my understanding, it's getting worse. There's an election coming up, and you know, if some certain parties get in there, it could make it harder on Christians in India. 2006, they published the first magazine. So here's when this was Sunday. When Linwood and Zonell were over there. This is the church that meets there at the Jack Nell Institute, and they had dinner there afterwards. You can see Titus and Joycey there in the bottom right of the screen. As you can see, they all eat with their hands, but I'm sure Zonell and Linwood have a fork that someone has given them. But as they were eating there, I was probably sitting in the Dallas airport on a Saturday night. There's a 11.5-hour time difference between here and there. So that brings me to the issues. These are just some general issues with this work. We are, there's 11.5-hour time difference, so it's 6:38 here, so it's about 6 a.m. Monday morning in India right now. So just trying to communicate a lot of times can be hard. You know, we do so by email, but just trying to do real time can be tough. I appreciate Rodney. I don't even know what day it was, brother, but I knew it was about 10 o'clock here, and I was trying to get hold of Jimmy and Fred, and I think I called all three phones, and I didn't get an answer, so I called Rodney. And Rodney said, well, I can run down there and get them. And so he did, but it was about 10 at night, I know. So then we wound up talking to Jimmy, getting what we needed, and then he called Arliss, and we talked to Arliss too. But like I say, if it had been much later, we would have been out of luck that night. But 11.5-hour time difference, 8,000 mile difference. There's also the Hindu culture. I'll show a slide next. And then the language, they speak either Telugu, Hindi, and English is their business language. They can, a lot of them can read it real well, but as far as speaking it, it's not so well. Titus, for example, was trained primarily to speak the Hindi language. So now when he goes out and translates for us, we'll speak in English. So a lot of times he has to go from English to Hindi to Telugu just for him to translate. So that's something Titus is having to work on. But speaking of the Hindu culture, that's where the caste system comes in. And all the folks that we deal with is there at the bottom, at the feet. They're the workers. They're the untouchables. They do all the work, you know, and so the further up you go, they don't want anything to do with the ones that are lower. And even though this system is illegal in India now, it's still submerged in their culture. So what are some immediate issues that we've had in India over this past year? Well, first, we've lost some financial support. Some's been due to sickness. Some's just due to, actually our largest supporter has pulled out for the time being. We're trying to get a person with them to go over there and see the work and everything. We lost an American trustee this past summer. The orphans are no longer. We've got the decline in English medium school enrollment, and there's also needs of at the facility. You know, and I hate coming in here and being kind of a downer that, you know, these things need to be said and brought to your attention. But I think after we left, everything will be better. Okay. So what's our goals? So we left here, we sat down and thought that we need to bring up a goal. So our goal is to be the premier preacher training school in India. That was Jack Cox's and Chandrapal's goal, I know, whenever they first started this work, is to train Indian preachers to go out and spread the gospel across India. So the purpose statement, what we're working with right now, is we train preachers of the gospel with the precious message of Christ to share with the lost and dying souls of India. And our mission is to furnish graduates with the necessary knowledge, allowing them to focus on the needs of their local congregations, training them to build up the church, strengthening individual Christians, and seeking and saving the lost. So, solutions. The first was to close the English medium day school. There was only about 100 students there now, and about 250 are needed to break even. And as I said, it was initially constructed to support the orphans there at the Institute. So the decision was made to close at the end of the current term in April. I say without the orphans there, we didn't see a need to be given a secular education to folks who had no tie to the Institute. Now Titus has put his heart and soul into this work, so that was a very, very tough meeting. But just to show you kind of how things go over there, I asked Titus, I said, Titus, if we sent you less money, I threw out a figure of, if we sent you $2,000 less per month, what would you do? What would you change? He said, whatever you tell me, brother. So, and I asked him again. He said, I'll do what you say, brother. So at the end of the day, the trustees, the trustees are Titus and Chandrapal are the Indian trustees, and me and Linwood Zonell are the American trustees. Then we appointed her son, is it Casey? Casey is the new trustee that took Michael Berry's place. So another solution is to make significant improvements to the facility. And I apologize, I didn't take a lot of pictures this go around. We were in a lot of meetings, we met daily for four to 6 hours a day probably. And so I don't know, my focus was on more of the meetings and what was going on than getting out and taking pictures. But something that's needed is an extensive cleaning of the buildings and ground. India is it's not a real clean country. When you go, there's garbage everywhere. The buildings look dirty. And so probably what we expect and what might not necessarily be what we have in mind, but it is something that needs to be done. New paint inside and out. I know it's had the same paint since I've been there. And with India being a very dry country, it gets dust on it. It gets dust and keeps dust on it, and so everything looks kind of dingy after a while. They need a water filtration system. Sewage is seeping into their groundwater, so their well there, the water's not fit to drink. So they're either having to bring in bottled water or the big jugs or whatnot. They need a kitchen upgrade, which includes a kitchen gas line. The current gas line's rusted out, so they're having to. The kitchen's on the fourth floor of the building, so they're having to take the gas tanks up 4 flights of stairs up to the kitchen. And then they also need to upgrade their living accommodations for the students if we want to make this a premier preacher training college in India. Currently, you'll have maybe 8 to 12 students staying in one room. And so we looked at maybe dividing the rooms up into maybe where you could have 2 students to a room. Here's just like some pictures of the kitchen area. If you look at the bottom left, you can that's where they cook at right there. The bottom right's just a garden that they have right outside the institute. And just right next to that garden there, if you top right, that's some banana trees there. But it looks kind of wet right there, and it's wet for a reason. That's because that's where their sewage is running out and just running along the wall right there. So we've built a sewage treatment plant back 3 years ago, and we're still trying to get it up and going. That's something we gave as a must-do for Titus for this next year. So another solution is a better trained faculty. Titus, he did impress us. He had already told his instructors that they need to advance their education. Many of them would just have a high school education with just some Bible knowledge. And so if they decline or are unable, new instructors will be hired. But of course, at the same time, that will take on higher salaries for better trained faculty. Also, to teach trades, sewing, computers, etc. That's something that's been going on, and that's something that we plan to continue. Most graduates, they don't preach full time because the churches over there. I forget who I was talking to, but something that they need to work on is their giving and their understanding of giving. But that's one reason that the preachers must have another occupation to do to support their families. Here you can see class going on. we found out that we went over at a bad time. This time there was a holiday or festival going on, and that holiday's like 3 days long. So during that time, most of the students weren't there, but there were still 20 or so that came back there during that week. But like I say, most of them the festival was Monday through Wednesday, I believe. But here's a class going on there at Jack Nell. Another solution is to attract a more highly educated student. Over the years, the church has matured. Just, everything is getting better in India, the education level of everybody. I guess as the caste system kind of goes away in some aspects, everybody has opportunity for an education. So as that's happened, the church has matured. But as the church is maturing and the people more educated, our preachers need to be more educated to throw off false teachers to prove, false teaching. But something we talked to them about is, as they improve their curriculum, don't reinvent the wheel, but borrow it from those that are doing it right. There's some schools here in America that they can look at: Freed, Bear Valley, Heritage, and such. We also talked about maybe trying to do some online courses. This could be used for the students as well as for the faculty to improve their education. Titus mentioned some new courses maybe to do. One on sermon delivery might be one I need to go visit myself, and then another one being advanced English as well. One more thing is the support from India. I already talked about just the giving, but there's no local congregations or individuals are currently supporting at Jack Nell. Something we discussed was there's home campaigns in Hyderabad, Chennai, and locally to raise awareness of Jack Nell and the need for support for Jack Nell, and doing meetings and classes at the same time. Also trying to create an alumni association. But this is something Jack Nell's done. There's over 4,000 graduates of Jack Nell Institute. This is how much that work has done over there. So if you take 4,000 in each little village church, you'll see 100 people at a meeting. So, just think of the hundreds of thousands of people, at least, that have been touched by this work in India. That's why my heart is in India, is just because of the good that it has done. Just at a recent gathering of 300 Christians, approximately 150 were Jack Nell graduates, and some of those have their own institutions as well. Jack Nell has been seen as a premier preacher training school in India, and I'm not going to say it's not right now, but we just want to kind of reset and get back to to doing what it was intended to do, and that's to teach preachers to train and preach the gospel and bring lost souls to Jesus. So Titus, there's a picture of Titus as he was trying to do something there at his computer, and I snuck a picture. But some duties for him this next year is to complete paperwork to officially make him the director. I think he's got to do this by March 31st. He needs to do some PR work to increase awareness of Jack Nell among Christians and the general public. And a big thing that I've been pushing, and Zonell pushed as well, is to obtain this visa to visit the U.S., to meet y'all, to meet all the supporters of the work. Chandrapal always did a good job of getting over here, and people know Chandrapal, but people don't know Titus, and that's something I keep stressing to him. People have got to meet him. These supporters want to see who they're supporting, who they're working with. Us going over there and bringing back a report's great, but if we can bring them here, it'll be so much better. Chandrapal, just an update on Chandrapal. He's still preaching. He's still teaching some at Jack Nell. Last year, he attended 24 fellowship meetings with Jack Nell graduates. He's solemnizing weddings and assists other preachers. I'm not real sure. I think their wedding festivities can take a couple of days over there. I'm looking for a head nod, Jimmy. Is that right? So I know there's some certain things that they got to do for the government. He's helping local congregations with training and leadership instruction, writing articles and translating books. And he's also helping the two-year students at Jack Nell form gospel teams. They go out and work in the local congregations, and he's helping just train them to be a better preacher and minister of the word. Just some random pictures. There's those tasty delights like Elijah used to make there in the middle. I was at a buffet there. Then that top right is a neat concept to me. It's a Barbecue Nation restaurant, and they bring you a charcoal grill out and put it in the middle of your table, and then they bring you skewers of food, and just kind of neat there. We did go out to the villages, as I mentioned. There, they usually always have some bright lights up around the building. The one on bottom right's the forest that we went out to, that we drove a couple hours. I'm gonna have a short video to show here in just a minute. You'll see some of that, just to show just Jack and Andy up there in the top left, Chandra Paul, Zonell and Linwood, and me and Titus and Joycey. Got to take another motorcycle ride while I was over there, and this time I took it with Elijah's brother Jefferson. There on the bottom left, we didn't hardly have that much baggage on there, but that's how the ladies get their groceries home. So Angela and I sent Jack and Andy some remote control cars and a football, so I think Titus and Joycey might be thanking us for that. Ian and Linda, I thought about y'all. That was a beehive up in the tree right there. So I thought about y'all. I should have grabbed that down and brought it back for y'all to. You could have some Indian bees out there with your Russian bees. That bottom right, I got Linwood and I double beds at the hotel in Hyderabad, and that's what their double beds look like. So there's a crack separating. That's about all. So. But this is Joycey and Jack, Andy, Titus, and Chandra Paul. I just ask that you keep this family in your prayers. They've worked hard for many years, and Titus, he's nothing like his daddy. He's a very quiet and humble man. I know a lot of y'all met Chandra Paul. Know he's pretty loud and everything. Titus is opposite, but he's really trying hard, and I just ask that you keep him in your prayers. Tim, you mind playing that video? This is just some sights and sounds of India while I was there. Like I say, this first you'll see some of the festival that was going on. I'll hit the lights. You get the sound?
In Hebrews, it tells us what God wanted. February రాసిన పత్రికలో దేవుడు మనల్ని ఏం కోరుతున్నాడు అనేది తెలియజేస్తున్నాడు.
You just have to go wherever you want to go. You just have to cross cross traffic.
Outside.
Right there.
That's it.
They really do sit at your feet over there as you speak. Then their traffic's always a fun, really fun. But I'll say just continue to keep this work in your prayers. You advance me, Tim. So, as I was traveling this time, it was tough for me. I traveled over there about 30 hours all alone, and it was tough, very tough for me, and even while I was with Elijah, I felt alone. I just put this up there as a little Snapchat thing, but you can see me there on the left side. I'm there in India all by myself, and then in the right picture, if you looked on the very edge of the left side, you can see all the folks in America, and then there I am, alone. But even while I was traveling with Elijah, he and his buddies that would be with him, they would be speaking their own language, and I had no idea what they was talking about, and I was 8,000 miles away from those that I loved the most. And there was a couple times when we were starting to leave, I wasn't sure if I would make it back. We flew from Vijayawada to Hyderabad, and I carry a backpack with me, and I had my Bible in the very bottom of my backpack, kind of forming the bottom of my backpack. And as I go through security, they said, "Have you got something thick in your backpack?" He didn't say it that clearly, but that's what he was asking. And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Is it a book?" I said, "Yeah, it's a book." Look, I didn't want to say Bible. But anyways, he was wanting me to pull it out, so I pulled it out, and he goes, "Oh, Bible." I said, "Yes, good." I told him, "It's just a book. But he wanted to see that book. And he actually got my Bible out, and he started flipping through it. And just being in a strange country like that, that's not a very good feeling, that that a book that you have that they may not appreciate is, they could have took me aside and did whatever to me at that time, but luckily here I am. But the whole time I was there, my safety net was with Linwood and Zonell. That night I was away from them, away from my fellow Americans. Like I say, I felt alone. I feel a lot safer, and my belonging is here in Leoma, Loretta. I had Josh read 1 John 2 about do not live in the world. Our safe place shouldn't be in the world either. Out in the world, we should feel alone as Christians. We shouldn't feel safe in the world. We should feel safe here at church with each other. World gets us nowhere. We're just alone. Romans 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So we should not be conformed, but be transformed by renewing our mind, renewing our mind daily. And we should be doing that daily through reading and study of the Word and coming together like this with fellowship and worship. Then Acts 2. Starting at verse 42. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of the bread and the prayers. And all came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. I know I've stood in this pulpit the few times I've stood up here, and I know I've read that before, but those verses mean something to me. That should bring us comfort. We should try to be like the early church there and be together, and that way we don't feel alone. You know, this past year has been a struggle for me personally, just with death of those I love, sickness of those I love, you know, just the change in life that we've had, and trying to make everything as normal as we can for our boys. You know, and something I saw years, I'm sure y'all have seen, that's let go and let God. And that's something I know I personally need to do more of. I do think of that saying a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean just turn it all over to Him and say, God, you can take care of this. He will take care of it. But at the same time, we got to let go of the outcome that we have in our mind and let God manifest His will and let us accept what His will is. And something that this church is very good at as far as not being alone, and something that's been spoken about a lot lately, mentioned in Galatians 6:2, and that's bearing one another's burdens. I've got some great brothers here that I depend on, and great sisters too. I've had a lot of brothers and sisters that I know I can depend on and I do depend on, but I need to do more of it. I need to lean on the church more so that I never will feel alone. I don't, you know, that lonely feeling in India, that was more of a personal, but I don't need to have that in my Christian life. I don't never need to feel alone. You know, I need to let go of my ego. You know, it's okay to cry. That's something Angela and I've talked a lot about lately. It's okay to cry. You know, I talk about the Indian culture, you know, and, you know, it's got its faults, but our American culture has its faults too, and that's especially with men and our egos, you know. It's okay. We need to bear each other's burdens, let each other know what we're struggling with, and because we all do care for each other. I do know that. So, but I know tonight I can't be the only one that feels that way. And so, if you feel that way, if you're feeling alone, if you feel like if you need us to pray for you and with you, or if you need anything else, I ask that you come while we stand and sing. Jesus.